The Museum of Galactic History floated serenely in the gravitational cradle of Orleans Prime, the Accord's capital, a monument to 10,000 years of peace. It was a gleaming spiral of silver and translucent crystal, suspended in a ring of starlight. Here, the diplomats of 1,000 worlds brought their children to show them how far civilization had come. Here, violence was not forgotten, but contained, sanitized, and explained away. Velthana of the Varelian Ascendancy stood before the sealed vault, her four eyes scanning the biometric interfaces with a scholar's trepidation. She was the youngest High Curator ever appointed to the museum, and now, for the first time in nearly a millennium, she was opening the forbidden exhibit. The door hissed open with a whisper of cold gas and ionized dust. Darkness waited beyond. She stepped inside. Lights flickered to life as the room detected her presence, illuminating relics that had not seen light in generations. Steel, gunmetal, black powder, artifacts of pain. A massive cracked helmet dominated the center of the chamber, its surface scorched and pitted from what ancient records called rail gunfire. Beside it rested the skeletal remains of a humanoid combat drone, its fingers frozen mid-trigger pull. Terran Dominion. Final Warfront. Circa 3200 AS. Velthana's tendrils coiled in discomfort. The Terrans, humans, as they called themselves, were unlike any other species, not just in biology, but in ideology. Violence, to them, wasn't just a method, it was art, doctrine, sometimes even faith. She moved to a pedestal where a cracked book lay in stasis, its faded cover barely legible. The Art of War, Sun Tzu. Annotated Human Edition. She shivered. The annotations were in blood-red ink. A voice spoke from the vault's intercom. Curator Velthana, the Council requests your presence in the Prime Spire. Immediate priority. She touched her comm bead. Is this about the disappearance of Outpost S? Yes, they believe it may relate to humanity. Silence lingered between the pulses of her twin hearts. Humanity is extinct. Has been for 1,000 years, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Not extinct, the voice replied. Exiled. 2 hours later, Velthana stood before the Accord High Council, beneath a stained glass dome that depicted the Treaty of Eternal Peace. The chamber pulsed with quiet tension. Species from every corner of the galaxy watched her. High Speaker Ulvax, a being of pure light encased in a floating lattice of dark matter, spoke first. We have received a signal, an emergency distress call from Deep Sector Theta. The message contained 3 things: coordinates, a warning, and a human voice. The chamber rippled with disbelief. Velthana leaned forward. What did the voice say? The speaker paused. Then, through the chamber's speakers, the message played. To the Accord, this is Commander Elias Voss. If you're hearing this, it means the stars are dying. You banned war. We perfected it. Come find us. The room erupted. No, it cannot be them. They were exiled. They're dead. But Velthana remained quiet. She had seen the relics, studied their strategies, even their cruelty. And now, she listened not with fear, but with cold understanding. Because deep down, something in her agreed with the voice. When stars died, you didn't call poets. You called monsters. The shuttle's engines hummed softly as it pierced through the dark expanse of Sector 000, the fabled dead zone on every galactic map. No star systems charted here. No planets worth the effort. Just endless void. Abandoned by the Galactic Accord 1,000 years ago, labeled as a barren wasteland. A prison for those who once threatened peace across the stars, humanity. Commander Nira Kale, a Varelian scout assigned to this mission, sat rigid in her cockpit, her 6 eyes scanning the empty void. Behind her, Velthana sat quietly, her thoughts as stormy as the starless sky before them. The Accord's scientific satellites had detected faint electromagnetic signatures, traces of life and activity, in Sector 000, contradicting centuries of accepted knowledge. And more alarming was the new transmission, a human voice calling out for help. Now, they were here to see for themselves. The shuttle slowed, gliding towards a small, rust-colored planet orbiting a dim red dwarf star. Its surface was scarred with craters, its atmosphere thin but breathable. This was the new Earth, or what remained of it. As the shuttle pierced the thick, iron-rich clouds. The landscape revealed itself. Sprawling industrial complexes rose from the red dust like metal giants. Smoke plumed into the ruddy sky, twisting with bursts of blue and green energy. Towering walls, constructed from layered alloys and scarred armor plates, surrounded vast training grounds. Humanoid figures, dressed in dark, utilitarian armor, moved with practiced precision. Velthana's tendrils twitched involuntarily. They survived, she whispered. Nira nodded. More than that, they thrived. The shuttle touched down at a massive landing dock carved into the side of a mountain. Soldiers, tall, fierce, and alert, formed ranks to greet them. Their armor bore the sigil of a flaming sword crossing a broken chain, a symbol long extinct in the Accord's lexicon, the Iron Legion. A towering figure stepped forward. His face was sharp, his eyes hard with the weight of command and loss. He was Elias Voss, commander of the Iron Legion and the voice from the distress call. "You're the envoy from the Accord," Voss said without greeting, his voice low and unyielding. Velthana straightened. "We come seeking understanding." Voss's eyes narrowed. "Understanding? After 1,000 years of exile, you come to understand or to judge?" Nira stepped forward. "We come with an offer, a warning. A threat is coming. The Sun Eaters consume whole star systems. The Accord cannot stop them alone." Voss studied her carefully, then looked back at Velthana. "And you believe we are the answer?" "Your methods are unorthodox," Velthana said cautiously, "but we have no choice." Inside the Iron Legion's fortress, known as the Forge, Velthana and Nero were escorted through narrow corridors lined with ancient human weapons and propaganda murals. Images of wars long past, painted in red and black, depicted humanity's violent history. Ships ablaze, cities crumbling, soldiers locked in combat. Yet the murals also told a story of survival and rebirth. "This is no mere militia," Velthana murmured. "They are a society built on war." In a stark war room, holographic star maps flickered in the dim light. Voss gestured at the spiraling swarm of shadows, the Sun Eaters, devouring the stars. "We have spent centuries preparing for this," Voss said grimly. "You locked us away to forget war, but we never forgot it. We trained. We engineered ourselves into warriors again." He tapped a panel, bringing up schematics of advanced warships, biological weaponry, and the infamous Blood Protocol, an ancient and brutal doctrine banned by the Accord. "War is in our blood," Voss said. "You exiled us for it, but it's also what will save you." Velthana listened, torn between the ideals she had sworn to uphold and the harsh reality before her. "How do you justify the cost?" she asked softly. "The lives sacrificed for this army of death?" Voss's eyes burned with conviction. "Peace is a luxury of the strong. When the universe is burning, only those who embrace the flame can survive." He showed her footage from recent skirmishes. Planets reduced to ash, fleets shattered, Sun Eater bioships collapsing into themselves under human fire. The Iron Legion fought with a ferocity and tactical genius that no other Accord species could match. But there was a price. "Every victory costs thousands of lives," Voss admitted. "We are not heroes. We are survivors." That night, Velthana stood on the Forge's observation deck, staring up at the stars with a mixture of awe and dread. The humans were different from any species she had encountered. Their rage and resilience were terrifying, but beneath it was an unyielding will to protect their home, to fight for the galaxy's survival even if it meant becoming the monsters the Accord had feared. Nira approached quietly. "Do you believe we made a mistake, exiling them?" Velthana shook her head. "No. We were afraid, but fear can blind you. Sometimes, the very things you banish become your salvation." As the Iron Legion prepared to join the galactic defense, the question lingered. Was humanity the universe's curse or its last hope? The galaxy was vast, and in its depths lurked dangers even the oldest civilizations dared not face. The Sun Eaters were one such terror, an ancient, sentient hive species whose hunger stretched beyond comprehension. To the Galactic Accord, they were a nightmare confined to legend, a cosmic plague of darkness that devoured entire star systems and left nothing but cold void in their wake. But now, the nightmare had returned. Commander Elias Voss sat in the command bridge of the Iron Wrath, flagship of the Iron Legion fleet. The bridge hummed with energy, a complex ballet of holographic star charts, tactical displays, and fleet communications. Around him, hardened officers and AI tacticians coordinated the fleet's advance through the shadowed regions near the galactic edge. The Iron Wrath was a behemoth of warship design, armored with reactive alloys and layered defenses optimized for the brutal, close-quarters combat humanity had mastered over centuries. Its weapon systems were as ruthless as its crew: plasma lances, gravity disruptors, and quantum torpedoes designed to fracture star cores. Yet even this mighty vessel felt small facing the void ahead. On the main display, a shifting mass of black and violet flickered, the Sun-Eater swarm. They were unlike any known life form. The Sun-Eaters were a collective consciousness, a vast hive mind formed of billions of individual organisms. Their bodies were composed of strange, semi-organic materials capable of bending space-time. They moved not by conventional propulsion but by warping gravitational fields, ripping stars apart to fuel their expansion. Their fleet was a living storm of destruction. Voss's second-in-command, Lieutenant Carathane, broke the silence. "Commander, our sensors indicate the swarm is closing in on the Orena system. If they reach the core world, the Accord's entire eastern flank could collapse." Voss nodded grimly. "Prepare the fleet for engagement. This is what we trained for." The Iron Wrath and its accompanying vessels surged forward, cutting through the darkness toward the advancing swarm. The fleet's AI commanders exchanged rapid calculations, predicting movement patterns, vulnerabilities, and attack points. Yet the Sun-Eaters adapted with terrifying speed. When the fleet opened fire, the swarm bent gravity waves around their ships, rendering most energy weapons ineffective. The Sun-Eaters struck like shadows, engulfing entire squadrons in tendrils of dark matter before ships could react. Human pilots responded with desperate maneuvers and surgical strikes, targeting weak points in the swarm's formations, using experimental bioweapons engineered over centuries. Amid the chaos, Voss's voice echoed over comms. "Focus fire on the hive clusters. Deploy the quantum torpedoes. Don't let them consolidate." The battle turned brutal. Explosions lit the void. Starfire against starfire. Ships vanished in clouds of displaced matter, and AI war engines sacrificed themselves to buy time. But even in the carnage, Voss felt a grim satisfaction. The Iron Legion was holding the line where others could not. Back on Orly's Prime, the High Council watched the battle's progression with mounting dread. Ambassador Velthana was present, her gaze fixed on the flickering tactical display. High Speaker Ulvax addressed the chamber. "The Iron Legion's arrival has shifted the balance. Without them, the Sun-Eaters would have already engulfed the Orena system. But at what cost?" asked a delegate from the Zelvkar cluster. "Their tactics violate every Accord principle. If we empower them further, are we not sacrificing our own morals?" Velthana stood. "Sometimes, survival demands sacrifice. The Iron Legion's methods may be harsh, but their results are undeniable. We must decide. Do we cling to peace or embrace the fire that protects it?" Meanwhile, aboard the Iron Wrath, the battle escalated. Voss's chief tactical officer, a grizzled human named Soren Maul, reported an alarming development. "Commander, the Sun-Eaters are deploying a new formation, a gravity web designed to trap our capital ships." Voss frowned. "If we're caught, it could collapse our fleet's entire front." "Recommend immediate deployment of the Starbreaker drones," Soren said. "They can disrupt the web structure." Voss nodded. "Deploy." Swarming from the Iron Wrath's hangars, sleek, autonomous drones armed with graviton disruptors darted toward the web. The drones' AI pilots coordinated their attacks with lethal precision, tearing through the Sun-Eaters' gravity fields. The web collapsed in a burst of energy, freeing the trapped vessels. Yet even as victory seemed possible, a deeper threat revealed itself. Sensors detected a massive, pulsating node at the heart of the swarm, the Sun-Eater Hive Queen. A creature beyond comprehension, the Hive Queen controlled the swarm's every movement. Destroying her would cripple the hive mind, but reaching her meant penetrating layers of deadly defenses and traversing war-torn space filled with traps. Voss made his decision. This battle is not just for Arena. It's for the galaxy's future. We will strike at the Hive Queen's node and end this nightmare. The fleet began a desperate advance into the swarm's core. Gravity fields twisted and folded space-time as the Sun Eaters unleashed their full arsenal. Ships fell, heroes rose, and the galaxy washed with bated breath. In the middle of the storm, Velthana's voice came through to Voss. "Commander, the Accord is sending reinforcements, but they lack your experience. You are our spear." Voss's eyes narrowed. "Then I will make sure the spear strikes true." As the Iron Wrath pushed forward, Voss thought of the exile humanity had endured. They had been branded monsters, cast out for their violence. But in this moment, their violence was the shield that protected billions of lives. The Sun Eaters were the darkness beyond light, and humanity was the fire. The air inside the forge was thick with the scent of burning oil and hot metal. Velthana's multiple eyes flicked across the dimly lit chamber, absorbing every detail. Around her, the hum of machinery and the distant echoes of training drills created an atmosphere both tense and alive. This was humanity's crucible, a place where survival was forged from pain, discipline, and unyielding will. Commander Elias Voss led her through the sprawling complex to a heavily secured vault, reinforced with layers of armor and biometric locks. The door bore a faded insignia, a blood-red sword dripping with flame, the symbol of the Iron Legion's most feared doctrine, the Blood Protocol. "This is where you will understand what it truly means to fight," Voss said, his voice low and grave. "The Blood Protocol is not just strategy. It's philosophy. It's our way of life." Velthana's tendrils twitched with a mix of curiosity and unease. The Accord had banned the protocol centuries ago, condemning it as barbaric, a violation of their peace doctrines. But here it was, alive and worshipped like a sacred text. Inside the vault, holographic projectors flickered to life, illuminating walls inscribed with battle plans, psychological conditioning programs, and combat footage spanning millennia. At the center stood a massive console where Voss activated a simulation interface. "Watch closely," he instructed. The simulation began, a holographic reenactment of one of humanity's darkest battles, fought during the final years before their exile. It was brutal, savage, and brilliantly tactical. The Iron Legion soldiers moved with ruthless efficiency. Their commanders employed tactics that combined psychological warfare with precise, overwhelming force. The battlefield was a chessboard of fire and death, where every move was calculated to break the enemy's will. Velthana observed the soldiers' behavior. What shocked her wasn't the violence, it was the discipline, the unity forged in shared suffering. The Blood Protocol demanded absolute loyalty, but also an acceptance of sacrifice. "This doctrine," Velthana murmured, "it conditions warriors to embrace death as part of life." Voss nodded. "Exactly. We don't just prepare for battle. We prepare for the reality that some of us will not survive, and that those who do must carry the burden." He explained that the protocol was developed during humanity's darkest hours, when entire planets were lost and extinction seemed inevitable. It was a doctrine of survival through transformation, psychological, biological, and cultural. The Blood Protocol's most controversial aspect was its bioengineering programs. Soldiers were enhanced with gene splicing and cybernetic augmentations designed to increase endurance, reflexes, and pain tolerance. But these modifications came with a cost: emotional dampening, aggressive conditioning, and a detachment from civilian life. Voss gestured to a chamber where some of the Legion's finest soldiers underwent the transformation. "They are not just soldiers," he said quietly. "They are weapons." Velthana's multiple eyes traced the figures inside. Human bodies with mechanical limbs, glowing veins, and eyes that seemed almost alien. She felt a pang of sorrow for what humanity had become, but also a grudging respect. The conversation turned to the Blood Protocol's psychological training. "Fear is the mind's greatest enemy," Voss explained. "The protocol teaches us to channel fear into controlled aggression, to use pain as a tool, not a weakness. He described rituals and simulations designed to desensitize recruits to trauma. Soldiers faced virtual scenarios where comrades fell, where despair was constant, and where failure meant annihilation, not just of oneself, but of entire worlds. It's brutal, Velthana said softly, but effective. Voss agreed. The Accord's peace has blinded many to the necessity of strength. We were outcasts for centuries because we refused to forget the cost of peace. Velthana found herself wrestling with a growing contradiction. She had always believed in diplomacy, in unity among species. Yet here was a doctrine that embodied the raw truth of survival. Only the strong and the ruthless endured. That night, she stood alone on the forge's highest battlement, gazing up at the faint stars beyond the planet's hazy atmosphere. Her thoughts were a storm of doubt and revelation. Was the blood protocol the darkness that humanity had succumbed to? Or was it the necessary flame that would save the galaxy from extinction? As dawn broke, Velthana made a decision. The Iron Legion's methods were harsh and often merciless, but they held knowledge the Accord needed. They held the power to fight the Sun Eaters. Returning to Voss, she said, if we are to stand any chance, we must embrace parts of the blood protocol. We must learn not only to fight, but to understand the price of survival. Voss's face softened with respect. You're ready to see what it means to become more than peacekeepers. And with that, Velthana took her first step into humanity's war. The news of the Iron Legion's brutal tactics and the revival of the blood protocol rippled through the Galactic Accord like a seismic shockwave. For centuries, the Accord had prided itself on peace, diplomacy, and the delicate balance of power among countless star systems. The Iron Legion, once exiled and scorned as warmongers, had returned, dragging humanity's savage past into the present and forcing everyone to confront an uncomfortable truth. Survival sometimes demanded more than words. Ambassador Velthana stood in the grand hall of the Accord's council chamber on Orelys Prime, her usual calm tempered with resolve. The room buzzed with tension as delegates from dozens of species debated fiercely. Holograms of battlefields, casualty reports, and star maps floated above the polished floor, highlighting the stakes. The Iron Legion fights with fire and blood. The Zelvkar delegate spat, his mandibles clicking angrily. Their methods endanger our fragile peace. We must condemn them and sever all ties. The Meridrian envoy, a serene figure clad in flowing robes, countered softly. But the Sun Eaters show no mercy. If we reject the Legion's strength, entire worlds will fall. Velthana took the floor, her voice steady but passionate. The Sun Eaters are an existential threat, she said. Our traditional methods have failed. The Iron Legion's blood protocol may be harsh, but it has bought us time. We must adapt or perish. The debate grew heated. Many delegates feared that embracing the Legion's ways would erode the Accord's core principles. Others saw the need for a new paradigm, one that balanced peace with preparedness. Behind the scenes, secret discussions unfolded. Velthana worked tirelessly, bridging gaps between opposing factions. She met with the High Speaker Ulvax, whose gravitas commanded respect. We must decide what kind of future we want, Ulvax said. Can we maintain our ideals when faced with annihilation? Or must we forge a new path through fire? Velthana nodded. The Accord cannot survive if it remains paralyzed by fear. It must evolve. Meanwhile, the Sun Eater swarm pressed relentlessly on. The Iron Legion's frontline fleets were battered, but holding. Reports from the Iron Wrath detailed heroic stands, devastating losses, and glimpses of victory. Commander Voss faced pressures from both his superiors and his conscience. The blood protocol demanded ruthless efficiency, but the cost was heavy, friends lost, colonies destroyed, and the ever-present question, how far could humanity go before it lost itself? Back on Orelys Prime, Velthana received a coded transmission from Voss. Ambassador, his voice was grave. The Hive Queen's defenses are adapting faster than we predicted. Our current tactics won't be enough. We need the Accord's resources and its willingness to embrace the harsh realities of war. Velthana relayed the message to the Council. The urgency was undeniable. The Accord voted to authorize limited cooperation with the Iron Legion, granting access to advanced technologies and strategic support. But it came with strict oversight, forcing the Legion to temper its more extreme measures. The decision fractured the Council. Some saw it as a betrayal of peace, others as a necessary compromise. Velthana emerged as a leader in this new era, a symbol of the Accord's willingness to change. As preparations for a final assault on the Hive Queen's node began, Velthana traveled to the Forge once more. She sought to understand the human warriors not just as soldiers, but as people shaped by a brutal doctrine. In a training chamber, she watched recruits endure grueling trials, physical pain, mental endurance, and simulations designed to break and rebuild their spirits. One soldier, a young woman named Dara, caught Velthana's attention. Despite the harsh conditioning, Dara's eyes held something unexpected: hope. Velthana approached Dara after the session. "How do you carry the weight of this?" she asked. Dara smiled faintly. "We fight because we believe there's a future worth surviving for. The blood protocol teaches us to endure, but it's faith that keeps us human." Velthana felt a surge of understanding. The protocol was more than cruelty. It was a crucible forging resilience. The final plan was set. The Iron Legion would spearhead the attack, using the blood protocol's teachings to push beyond limits. The Accord's fleets provided support and containment, ensuring no escape for the Sun-Eater swarm. As the combined forces prepared, Velthana reflected on the path ahead. Peace was fragile, strength was essential, and in the balance lay the fate of all sentient life. The vastness of space was silent, but for the faint hum of engines and the crackling comms channels. Above the shattered remains of the Khari system, the Iron Legion's fleet assembled in tight formation. Their ships, battered but resilient, gleamed under the pale light of a dying star. It was here, at the edge of the Sun-Eater's territory, that the final confrontation would unfold, a battle that could decide the fate of the galaxy. Commander Elias Voss stood on the bridge of the flagship Iron Wrath, his gaze fixed on the swirling void beyond. Around him, officers moved with quiet urgency, preparing for the assault. Velthana stood beside him, her presence a steadying force amid the tension. "The Hive Queen's node is here," Voss said, tapping a holographic map that showed a pulsating red core deep within the debris field. "Destroy that, and we cripple their control over the swarm." Velthana nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. This was no longer just a war for survival. It was the final reckoning. The last starfall had begun. As the fleet advanced, the Sun-Eater swarm erupted from the shadows. Countless ships, organic and alien, surged like a living storm. Their forms shifted and writhed, a grotesque ballet of destruction. The Iron Legion met them head-on. Laser blasts and missile volleys tore through the darkness, but the swarm was relentless. Each destroyed Sun-Eater seemed to spawn two more in its place. The battle quickly became a brutal war of attrition. Velthana monitored the tactical feeds, coordinating support and relaying orders between the Legion and the Accord's fleets. The combined forces fought with a desperate unity, each aware that failure meant extinction. Commander Voss led the assault team tasked with breaching the Hive Queen's defenses. His squadron darted through the chaos, weaving between enemy fire and debris. Inside the Iron Wrath, the atmosphere was electric with tension. Soldiers prepared their weapons, medtechs ran diagnostics, and strategists adjusted battle plans in real time. Velthana found herself drawn to Dara, the young soldier she had met during training. Dara's eyes burned with determination, a flame that had not dimmed despite the relentless combat. "You ready for this?" Velthana asked. Dara's grip tightened on her pulse rifle. "We've trained for this moment. It ends here one way or another." The assault squadron reached the Hive Queen's node, a massive, pulsating mass of biomechanical matter that radiated a dark, malevolent energy. Voss ordered the boarding teams to deploy. The Iron Wrath's crew launched dropships into the heart of the node, their mission to plant charges and disrupt the Hive's control systems. Velthana and her escort were among the first to land. The interior of the node was a nightmarish labyrinth of organic corridors, throbbing with alien life. Every step echoed with the sounds of distant skittering and guttural growls. The Sun-Eater defenders were everywhere, grotesque creatures blending biology and technology, relentless in their defense. The boarding party moved with precision, their training pushing them beyond pain and fear. Dara led a squad through a narrow passage, her pulse rifle cutting down enemies with brutal efficiency. Delthana kept close, issuing commands and keeping morale steady. She felt the surge of adrenaline and fear, the harsh reality of war unlike anything she had known before. They reached the control chamber, where the Hive Queen's core pulsed with terrible power. The room was alive, a fusion of flesh and machine, a throne of death. As the charges were set, the Sun Eater defenders launched a desperate counterattack. The boarding party fought tooth and nail, every second a battle for survival. Voss was wounded but pressed forward, rallying his soldiers. Dara covered Velthana as she worked the detonator controls. With a final, decisive command, Velthana triggered the explosion. The chamber shuddered as the Hive's control core erupted in a storm of fire and debris. Outside, the swarm faltered. Without their queen's guidance, the organic tide began to collapse in disarray. The Iron Legion and Accord fleets pressed the advantage, pushing the Sun Eaters back into the void. The last starfall was over. In the aftermath, survivors gathered on the decks of the Iron Wrath. The cost was staggering. Ships destroyed, lives lost. But the Hive's fall meant hope. Velthana stood with Voss, watching the stars. The galaxy had been scorched, but not broken. We fought through fire, Voss said quietly. Now we must rebuild, not just our worlds, but what it means to be sentient. Velthana nodded. The blood protocol showed a strength, but also sacrifice. The Accord must learn from this, and from humanity. The last starfall was not just the end of a war. It was a turning point for all species, a reminder that peace without strength was fragile, and survival demanded courage, unity, and sometimes harsh choices. As the stars shone coldly above, Velthana wondered what future awaited the galaxy, and what price they would pay to keep it. The fragile alliance between the Iron Legion and the Galactic Accord was still new, forged in the furnace of war, but tempered by uneasy trust. After the devastating victory at the Hive Queen's node, the galaxy found itself at a crossroads, rebuilding from ruin while grappling with scars that ran deep, both physical and ideological. Velthana returned to Orleans Prime, the gleaming capital of the Accord, a place that now felt like a battleground of ideas as much as it had been of starships. The grand halls that once echoed only with diplomacy now hummed with tension, suspicion, and debate. Representatives from countless worlds questioned what the future of the Accord and humanity's place in it would be. The victory over the Sun Eaters had saved millions of lives but came at a grave cost. The Iron Legion's tactics, especially those forged in the Blood Protocol, left many uneasy. Some viewed humanity's return to ruthless warfare as a betrayal of the Accord's ideals, a dark shadow threatening to engulf the hope they had fought so hard to protect. Velthana's role was more critical than ever. As a liaison between the Iron Legion and the Council, she was tasked with bridging these divides, but the weight of centuries-old prejudices and fears made her job daunting. One of the first challenges was the integration of Iron Legion veterans into Accord peacekeeping forces. These soldiers were bred in a crucible of blood and fire, their minds honed for survival and combat above all else. Many diplomats feared their presence would provoke conflict, disrupt the fragile peace, or reignite old hostilities. Velthana met with Dara, now a decorated soldier and a symbol of the new era. Dara's perspective was invaluable. She had lived through the extremes of the Blood Protocol and the transition to cooperation. "We fought as enemies," Dara said during one meeting, "but now we must learn to fight as allies. That means understanding, not just orders." Her words resonated with Velthana, but she knew it would take more than rhetoric. Real change required trust, and trust was fragile. Meanwhile, beneath the surface of political negotiations, darker forces stirred. Not all species or factions welcomed the new unity. Extremist groups, or profiteers, and remnants of the Sun Eater swarms exploited unrest. Sabotage attempts, assassinations, and propaganda campaigns threatened to unravel what had been achieved. Velthana uncovered evidence of a covert conspiracy aiming to reignite interstellar war, a cabal seeking to destabilize the Accord by exploiting distrust between the Iron Legion and other members. Determined to protect the fragile alliance, Velthana joined forces with Commander Voss and a select group of trusted operatives. Together, they launched a discreet investigation into the shadows of the Accord. Their search led them through the underbelly of Orly's Prime, a world of sleek towers but also hidden alleys where secrets festered. They encountered informants, mercenaries, and double agents, each with their own agendas. In one tense encounter, Velthana narrowly escaped an ambush, saved at the last moment by Dara and a squad of Iron Legionnaires. The incident underscored the dangers ahead and the necessity of their uneasy partnership. As the investigation progressed, Velthana learned that the conspiracy's reach extended to some high-ranking council members. These conspirators feared the loss of power and influence in a galaxy shifting toward cooperation and strength through unity. The plotters sought to discredit the Iron Legion by orchestrating attacks blamed on human forces, fueling outrage and calls for expulsion. They manipulated media and communications, twisting truths into lies. Faced with this internal threat, Velthana proposed a bold course of action, a public revelation of the conspiracy, coupled with reforms to increase transparency and accountability within the Accord. She faced fierce opposition. Many feared the scandal would shatter the fragile peace. Others doubted her motives, accusing her of protecting humanity's military agenda. But Velthana stood firm. Unity is fragile because it is forged from shadows as well as light. We must confront those shadows openly or risk being consumed by them. With the backing of Voss and a coalition of like-minded delegates, Velthana orchestrated a high-stakes council session. Evidence was presented, communications intercepts, witness testimonies, and undeniable proof of the conspiracy. The chamber erupted in shock and anger. Some conspirators were arrested, others fled into hiding. The scandal rocked the Accord, but also galvanized many members to renew their commitment to cooperation. In the aftermath, reforms were enacted. A new oversight council was established, including representatives from the Iron Legion, the Accord's various species, and independent watchdogs. Its mission was to ensure that no faction could undermine peace for selfish ends. Velthana became a leading voice in these reforms, advocating not only for security but for cultural exchange, education, and healing. The chapter closes with a ceremony on Orly's Prime, where representatives from the Iron Legion and the Accord stood side by side. Dara, honored for her bravery, addressed the gathering. "We are not the same as we were," she said. "Our past is bloodied, but our future can be bright if we walk together." Velthana watched as the crowd applauded, feeling a cautious hope. Shadows of distrust still lingered, but the seeds of unity had taken root. The uneasy peace forged in the wake of the last starfall began to show signs of strain as the galaxy's wounds slowly healed, and as old conflicts and new fears resurfaced. Though the Iron Legion and the Galactic Accord had united to face a common existential threat, the battle's echoes reverberated through every system, stirring memories, ambitions, and resentments that no ceasefire could fully silence. Velthana, now a key figure in the post-war order, found herself navigating a complex web of diplomacy, security challenges, and lingering trauma. The victory over the Sun-Eater Hive Queen had been decisive, but it had left scars, both visible and invisible, that threatened to destabilize the fragile alliance. The burden of victory. Victory had not come without sacrifice. Entire star systems had been devastated by the conflict, their populations decimated or displaced. Refugee crises stretched the Accord's resources to the limit, while the Iron Legion grappled with integrating battle-hardened veterans back into a society eager to rebuild, but wary of the horrors they had witnessed and enacted. Velthana's role increasingly became one of mediator and healer, as much as strategist. She traveled between worlds, witnessing firsthand the price of war and the determination of survivors to forge a new future. Rising tensions, despite shared goals, old rivalries simmered beneath the surface. Some Accord members resented humanity's dominance within the Iron Legion, viewing their tactics as excessively brutal or their ambitions as self-serving. In particular, the planet Carthus Prime became a flashpoint. Its government, a coalition of species with a history of conflict with human colonies, vocally criticized the Legion's influence and called for greater autonomy within the Accord. Protests erupted in the capital city of Syrax, and rumors of underground militant groups reached Velthana's ears. These tensions culminated in a violent clash between local security forces and human peacekeepers, resulting in casualties on both sides. The incident threatened to spiral into open conflict, forcing Velthana and her allies to act quickly. The investigation. Velthana launched a discreet investigation into the Carthus incident. She assembled a team of diplomats, intelligence officers, and former soldiers, including Dara, to uncover the truth behind the violence. Their findings revealed a complex web of provocations. Radical factions on both sides had infiltrated protests, inciting violence to undermine the fragile peace. Worse, evidence suggested foreign powers, still nursing grudges from the war, were covertly supporting extremist groups to destabilize the Accord. Velthana's team worked tirelessly to gather intelligence, de-escalate tensions, and expose the external interference. Diplomacy in action. Armed with evidence, Velthana arranged an emergency summit in Orleans Prime, bringing together leaders from Carthus Prime, human colonies, and key Accord members. The summit was tense. Accusations flew, old wounds reopened, and the risk of breakdown loomed large. But Velthana's calm leadership and unwavering commitment to dialogue helped shift the tone. She urged the participants to focus on common interests, security, prosperity, and survival. In a breakthrough moment, the Carthus Prime delegation agreed to a series of confidence-building measures, including joint patrols, cultural exchanges, and a shared task force to root out extremists. The shadow threat. However, as the summit progressed, Velthana's team uncovered disturbing intelligence. A remnant faction of the Sun Eater swarm, believed wiped out in the last starfall, had survived in deep space. This rogue faction was regrouping, adapting, and potentially preparing to strike again. Worse, it appeared they were forming uneasy alliances with disaffected groups within the Accord, further complicating the already fragile peace. The revelation sent shockwaves through the summit, reminding all present that the galaxy's true enemy had not been entirely vanquished. Preparing for the future. Velthana advocated for increased vigilance and stronger cooperation between the Iron Legion and the Accord. She proposed the creation of a joint rapid response fleet, capable of responding swiftly to any resurgence of the Sun Eaters or other threats. Despite initial resistance, especially from factions weary of ongoing militarization, most delegates recognized the necessity of preparedness. The future, they agreed, would demand a delicate balance between peace and strength. Personal struggles. Amid these galactic challenges, Velthana wrestled with her own doubts and fears. The memories of battle haunted her dreams, and the cost of victory weighed heavily on her conscience. She confided in Dara during a quiet moment aboard the Iron Wrath, sharing her fears that the cycle of war might never truly end, that the price of survival was an endless vigilance that might consume them all. Dara, ever steadfast, reminded her of humanity's unique resilience and capacity for hope. "We've seen darkness," Dara said softly, "but we've also proven that even in the worst moments, we can choose to rise." A new hope. The chapter closes with the launch of the new Joint Rapid Response Fleet, symbolizing a renewed commitment to unity and vigilance. As Velthana watched the ships depart, she felt a mixture of resolve and hope. The echoes of war would always linger, but so too would the determination to build a future where all species could stand together, not just in conflict, but in peace. The galaxy stood at the cusp of transformation. After decades of conflict, sacrifice, and uneasy alliances, the battered yet resilient civilizations of the Galactic Accord and the Iron Legion faced a choice: continue down a path of suspicion and division, or embrace a new era defined by unity. cooperation, and hope. Chapter 10 opens on the vibrant, bustling cityscape of Orleans Prime, the capital of the Accord. Its soaring spires and shimmering transit networks are a stark contrast to the shattered battlefields and refugee camps that had dominated recent years. The city itself, scarred but healing, symbolized the galaxy's fragile yet growing hope. The new council, Velthana, now recognized as one of the foremost leaders of this new age, played a pivotal role in the formation of the new Galactic Council, a governing body designed to embody the diversity, strength, and shared vision of all member species and factions. The Council was an unprecedented experiment, a forum where representatives of the Iron Legion, former adversaries, and smaller independent worlds met as equals to debate policies, resolve disputes, and plan joint initiatives. It was built on the hard lessons learned from decades of war, betrayal, and fragile truces. Velthana's opening speech to the council was a powerful call to action and reconciliation. She acknowledged the horrors and mistakes of the past without denial, recognizing the deep wounds that many bore. "But we do not stand here as victims of history," she said, "but as architects of the future. Our scars remind us of what we must never allow to happen again. The dawn of this new era demands courage, empathy, and an unyielding commitment to each other." Her words resonated deeply, signaling a turning point in the Accord's trajectory: healing and rebuilding. A major theme of this chapter is the emphasis on healing, both physical and psychological. Countless worlds still bore the marks of war, ruined cities, devastated ecosystems, and displaced populations struggling to find stability. The new council prioritized rebuilding efforts, combining resources and expertise to restore infrastructure, provide aid, and promote sustainable development. Beyond bricks and mortar, there was a growing recognition of the need for cultural healing. Programs were launched to encourage cross-species understanding through education, shared arts, and exchange programs. These initiatives aim to break down long-standing prejudices and foster empathy. Velthana oversaw one such initiative personally, a cultural exchange program pairing veterans from the Iron Legion with youth from diverse Accord worlds. Through storytelling, shared work projects, and open dialogue, participants began to see each other not as enemies or stereotypes, but as fellow beings with hopes and fears. Technological Renaissance. The end of the war also marked the beginning of a technological renaissance. Scientific minds from across the galaxy collaborated to unlock new frontiers. Advances in energy, medicine, and space travel accelerated. One of the chapter's highlights is the unveiling of a new propulsion system, inspired by human ingenuity and alien technology, that promised faster, safer interstellar travel. This breakthrough symbolized the practical benefits of unity. By pooling knowledge and resources, the Accord could achieve what no single species could alone: vigilance and preparedness. Though hope flourished, Velthana and other leaders remained vigilant. The shadows of past threats still lingered, and the threat of the surviving Sun Eater faction continued to loom. The Joint Rapid Response Fleet, launched in the previous chapter, stood as a testament to the Accord's commitment to defend its hard-won peace. Regular joint exercises and intelligence sharing became standard, ensuring readiness without provoking fear or aggression. Velthana reflected on the delicate balance required between strength and diplomacy, security and freedom, personal growth and legacy. On a personal level, Velthana grappled with the immense responsibilities resting on her shoulders. She had evolved from a fierce warrior to a wise leader, tempered by experience and compassion. Her relationship with Dara deepened, embodying the broader reconciliation between humanity's past and future. Together, they represented hope, proof that even the bloodiest histories could give rise to something better. The chapter explores Velthana's internal journey, her moments of doubt, resilience, and ultimate acceptance of her role as a beacon for a new era. A new threat emerges. Just as the galaxy began to breathe easier, the final pages of the chapter introduce a tantalizing hint of new challenges ahead. Reports arrive of strange energy signatures beyond the outer rim, phenomena that defied current scientific understanding. Some speculated these could be remnants of ancient civilizations or new threats lurking in the dark. Velthana convened a secret council to discuss these findings, emphasizing that vigilance and curiosity must go hand in hand. The new era was not an end, but a beginning, a chance to face the unknown together. Closing scene: the ceremony of unity. The chapter and the story culminates in a grand ceremony of unity held on Orelys Prime's central plaza. Leaders from across the galaxy gather, standing side by side under a vast sky streaked with multiple suns. Speeches are made, promises exchanged, and a symbolic planting of the Tree of Concord marks the commitment to peace and cooperation. Velthana, addressing the crowd, encapsulates the journey from chaos to hope. We have risen from the ashes of war, not to forget our past, but to forge a future where our differences are our strength. Together, we will face whatever dawns await us. The crowd erupts in applause, the light of the suns casting long shadows that stretch toward an uncertain but promising horizon. Themes and takeaways. Hope after hardship. The chapter is suffused with optimism but grounded in realism, acknowledging past sacrifices while focusing on rebuilding. Unity in diversity. The new council and cultural initiatives emphasize cooperation among different species and histories. Balance of vigilance and peace. The story recognizes that peace requires both readiness and trust. Legacy and personal growth. Velthana's journey from warrior to leader mirrors the galaxy's transformation. A new beginning. The final hint of unknown phenomena suggests that the adventure and the struggle for survival and identity continues.